Hello everyone, welcome to episode 7 of 360 Anything Goes. I am Lance Brock here, and I'm going to do something a little different this week. I am going to spoil the surprise. Not that it actually is a surprise, but I waited to the last minute this week to record the episode of Anything Goes. I'm sure everybody knows by now that Anything Goes is not live every week or posted right after it's recorded like all the other wrestling podcasts. I'm sure most people do know that it is recorded, comes out every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Anywhere you can listen to 360 Wrestling Podcasts. So I'm recording this very early Thursday morning. All week I said I was going to record it Sunday night, get done early. Monday night, still didn't record it. Tuesday night, still didn't record it. Tonight, this morning now, maybe, I just did a live episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic talking all about AEW Dynamite Grand Slam. And then I got into talking about this year's Pro Wrestling Illustrated's PWI 500. So that episode is now available as a podcast. Anywhere you listen to 360 Wrestling Podcasts, you can go check that out now. And on to this episode of 360 Anything Goes, episode 7. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And on today's episode, going to be talking soaps. Yep. And I don't know how long this one is going to be. Might not be too long, could be long, but who knows. I'm just going to talk about some of the soap operas that I like and have watched before. But before I get into this week's episode, talk a little bit more about last week's episode 6, where I talked about the Three Stooges, Idiots Deluxe, I think it's called. Still not too sure. Very good short. I recommend it if you have not seen that one. Definitely check it out. The full short is available on YouTube. And every Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, the Three Stooges on MeTV. Also, I'm going to do something that I haven't done yet, and that is kind of spoil for next week. This episode of 360 Anything Goes, which will be episode 8. Not gonna spoil it exactly, but next week is the last Thursday of September, which, to go back to the Stooges, is Shemp-tember. And I was planning on for next week to talk about 3 of my favorite Three Stooges shorts starring Shemp. I'm not sure which 3 I am going to talk about just yet, but I am going to talk about 3 different Three Stooges shorts starring Shemp Howard. So hopefully everybody will tune in for that next Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on 360 Anything Goes. And to get on to this week's episode, like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives, which is one of my current favorite soaps, Days of Our Lives. But let's start from the beginning. When I first started watching soaps, I know there might be some people complaining about it. Why are you talking about soaps? Blah, blah, blah. But like I said, anything goes. Can talk about just about anything every week. You never know what I'm going to talk about. I would probably say when I was in school, when I was a kid, I used to have to come home, do my homework at the kitchen table, and just about every day, my mom would be on the TV watching General Hospital. Of course, to kind of distract myself from my homework, I used to look over at the TV and watch General Hospital. Of course, you had Luke and Laura, you had Sonny Corinthos, Carly, and Jason Morgan, and Brenda at the time, and Robin. I used to get caught up in the storylines, and sometimes when there was a half day or if we didn't have school that day, I also used to watch All My Children. Of course, Susan Lucci, a legend in soaps, Erica Kane, and David Canary, also on All My Children, played Adam and Stuart Chandler, twin brothers. And yes, I do plan on talking about another show that he was on a feature episode of Anything Goes. He was on Bonanza as Candy Canaday, which not sure just yet, but I do plan on talking about Bonanza in the future right here on Anything Goes. And I remember I really liked the characters of Adam and Stuart Chandler. You had Adam Chandler, the evil businessman, and then you had his brother Stuart, who was the good twin, was nice to everybody liked, and then unfortunately ended up getting killed off. The soap was shot by Kendall Hart, the daughter of Erica Kane, who accidentally mistook him for his brother Adam. And also Michael E. Knight, who played Tad Martin on All My Children, now on General Hospital. And I started watching All My Children as well. And then when I started watching them on my own, actually, All My Children was one that I watched. Unfortunately, has been canceled. And then One Life to Live is another one I watched. Of course, like when I stayed home from school or had a half day. That was another one that my mom watched every day on ABC. Of course, I remember watching One Life to Live when I was a kid. I was a fan of the Buchanans. Of course, the head of the Buchanan family, Asa Buchanan, and probably my favorite Buchanan on One Life to Live, Bo Buchanan, the police commissioner, married to Nora Hannon Gannon Buchanan, and I want to say Colson. One time she was married to a guy named Daniel on the show. And Bo, of course, my favorite character on One Life to Live, his brother Clint, which originally played by Clint Ritchie. I've read before that the name of the character was actually going to be Chris Buchanan, but Clint Ritchie talked the producers and stuff into naming the character Clint after his real name. And you gotta talk about Erica Slezak, Vicky, one of the most famous characters on One Life to Live. Dorian Lord, her rival, and Cassie DePaiva playing Blair Kramer. She's now on General Hospital playing Blair once again. Has also appeared on Days of Our Lives as Eve Donovan, and also on One Life to Live is her husband Max. And to go back to the Buchanans, Asa Buchanan, played by Philip Carey, and once again, that's another show that I would like to talk about on a future episode of Anything Goes, the old Western Laredo, where he played Captain Parmalee, Phil Carey that is, and was also really good on that show as well. So I might talk about an episode of that in the future, right here on Anything Goes. And also General Hospital, which I've already mentioned. I really don't watch a whole lot of General Hospital now, but I definitely did at one time. Definitely a fan of the Quartermains. Alan Quartermain, unfortunately, Stuart Damon passing away in real life. Anthony Geary playing the legendary Luke Spencer. And yeah, Maurice Menard playing Sonny Corinthos, his wife Carly Corinthos, and Michael, who is actually the son of A.J. Quartermain, and at one time thought he was Jason's son. Jason Quartermain, played by Steve Burton, now on Days of Our Lives as what's his name? Something Michaels, I know. I can't think of his name, and I should though, since I watch Days of Our Lives every morning on Peacock. I know his last name is Michaels, but for some reason I can't remember his name. And unfortunately, not too long ago, Jackie Zeman, who played Nurse Bobby Spencer, passed away in real life. And Monica Quartermain, of course. And Ken Shriner, Scott, and on General Hospital, of course. He is on an episode of Full House as well. It's the episode when Uncle Jesse and Aunt Becky get married. He plays the one sheriff, I think it is, in Tomato Country when Uncle Jesse lands, when he goes skydiving, lands in a tree, and then falls into the back of a tomato truck. And Scott Baldwin, that's his name. And so that's pretty much everything I gotta say about General Hospital. Oh, one more thing to kind of tie wrestling into it. At one time, the Quartermains had a maid named Alice, who on the show was actually a wrestler, probably in the indies. And one time, at the time, WWE superstar David Otunga actually appeared on General Hospital, in case you didn't know that. And some other soaps I have watched. I have watched some of the Young and the Restless and the Bold and the Beautiful, which you can watch older reruns of them on Pluto TV, and of course every day on CBS. And I remember YNR and B&B I watched because I really started watching them mainly because at the time they were on Pop TV, and Pop would show the same day episodes. They would air, and I was watching Pop TV at the time because that's what channel Impact Wrestling was airing on at the time. So at first I started just watching on Thursdays. Bold and the Beautiful started at 6:30, and then at 7 The Young and the Restless was on. And then I would just leave it on for Impact. But then eventually I would get into the storylines, and then I started watching them every day. And I forgot another older soap that I watched, Port Charles, which of course was a spin-off of General Hospital. I started watching that mainly also half days, and when I was home here in Michigan, it came on at 12:30. Only on for a half hour though, and I got into it when they were doing the storyline arcs for about 13 weeks or something. And when I started watching, the one that was on was called Torn, and Kevin and Lucy were on at the time. Thorsten Kaye was playing Ian Thornhart, who plays on the Bold and the Beautiful. And the storyline at the time was when they had this dark character. They called him Lancelot, was one of the nicknames. I got into that, and I saw a little bit of Port Charles before, and the reason was because they did the vampire storyline with Livy and Caleb Morley, the vampire, and there were also angels involved. The angel, Rafe Kovich, I believe that was his name. He was on there, and I got into that. And then after that, after Torn, they went into the Naked Eyes storyline where Caleb returned, but he was supposed to be the singer in a band called the Stephen Clay Experience. And then that would go into each storyline arc, and then eventually Port Charles was canceled, unfortunately. The last story was called The Gift, and I remember at the time hearing about when Port Charles was canceled, the next story was actually going to be werewolves. They had a character, Amani, who was with Jamal, and at the end of the final episode, she did turn into a werewolf, but of course, since that was the end of Port Charles, never saw what happened next. And I know I'm jumping around here, but to go back to The Young and the Restless, unfortunately, recently was the passing of Billy Miller, who played Billy Abbott on The Young and the Restless, the brother of Jack Abbott. Yeah, very sad news. And he also played on General Hospital. I want to say his name was Jake. I could be wrong, so I'm sorry if I am. But he was supposed to be Jason, but he just didn't know he was Jason. And then he thought he was Jason. But then Steve Burton returned to General Hospital and found out that he wasn't the real Jason. And, well, it's a soap opera. And speaking of soaps, and of course this is a podcast, there is a good one. Steve Burton and Bradford Anderson, I believe his name is. They have a podcast Of course, Bradford was Spinelli on General Hospital. The Jackal, I thought that was pretty cool at the time because when he first started working with Jason, he gave him the nickname Stone Cold. So that podcast is available. I don't really listen to it maybe as much as I'd like to, but every once in a while I do. And that's all for this episode of 360 Anything Goes, episode 7. Thank you everyone for tuning in this week. Hope to be back next week with episode 8. Once again, I spoiled it in case you missed it. Gonna be talking about the Three Stooges again. Gonna talk about maybe 3 of my favorite shorts starring Shemp Howard, since next week will be the last Thursday of Shemptember. So hope everybody tunes in for that. Before I wrap up this episode of Anything Goes, remember 360 Wrestling Fanatic. I just recorded did a live episode, I should say, talking all about AEW Dynamite Grand Slam. And tune in every morning for 360 Good Morning Wrestling fans and 360 Wrestling Fanatic just about every day now, or every night after all the WWE shows, Raw, SmackDown, sometimes NXT, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and of course AEW Dynamite, Rampage, and Saturday Collision. So thank you everyone. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, you can leave them right here in the comment section, right here on Spreaker, YouTube, or whichever podcast app or website you listen to on. Give your feedback on soaps. Let me know which ones you watch. Do you watch All My Children, One Life to Live, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives, The Young and the Restless, The Bold and the Beautiful? Other ones I have not mentioned that you might watch. Let me know who is your favorite character from a soap opera, maybe your favorite storyline from a soap. Let me know in the comments section right here on Spreaker, YouTube, or whichever podcast website you listen to on. Thank you once again for tuning in. Remember, listen to all the other podcasts, please. And I appreciate you all listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, see you later, alligator.